Welcome. This is Unfolding, the show where I unfold creative business minds. My name is Marko, and now I just want you to sit back and enjoy the show. So we are back today, and I have a very special guest today, and his name is Mr. Ben Burns, and he is the COO of TheFutur. And he has a huge backstory, an incredible transformation, and that's what we want to talk about today. Welcome, Ben, or Mr. Burns.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. I'm so stoked to be here.
So the reason why I reached out to you and wanted to have you on my podcast is because I've seen this one email you sent out, and as I know, you write those emails yourself. And that email was all about limiting beliefs. And this is like a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and I want to talk about that today.
Absolutely.
So, why did you write that email?
Oh man, I think that limiting beliefs are at the core of why people aren't able to move forward in life, in their career, with their business, with their spouses. And it's because they're so sinister, right? You walk around in life believing something that is true when it's actually not. And that thing that you're believing is true is actually holding you back, right? That's why they're called limiting beliefs. And so it's like walking around thinking that you can't go outside and believing it to be true at the core of your being that you can't go outside. And how limiting would that be, right? If you think that you can't go outside, you're not going to be able to meet new people unless they come to your house. You're not going to be able to interact with nature, right? So limiting. But so many people that I get exposed to, they walk around with similar limiting beliefs. They think that they can't charge more. They think that they don't qualify for the job. They think that they're not good enough to be in any kind of arena. They think that they're not a salesperson. They believe crazy things to be true that end up holding them back. And so when I wrote that email, I was like, guys, this is it. And the tricky part about limiting beliefs is like, it's going to take somebody outside of your ecosystem to actually point out like, hey, this thing that you're walking around thinking is true, it's actually crazy. Like it's not, right? So that's why I wrote the email. I was like, I just wanted to smack everybody in the face with a big hug and say, this stuff isn't real, guys.
There's more, right? You can achieve more. You can go for dreams, things like that. I love it. Like, I mean, okay, the first question I have here is, when did you, because you said you need this outside perspective, you need this context from the outside. When was the first time that you realized there's a limiting belief, that you live by some outdated data, basically?
That's a good question. Before I joined TheFutur, before I joined the team at Blind, I ran my own creative studio. And I spent years as a solo studio, right? Some people call it freelancing, but really it's you're a solopreneur. You're wearing all the hats in the business. And in those years, I was getting most of my clients from platforms like Odesk, which I think now is Upwork, the Fiverr of the day, back in the early 2010s. And I didn't think it was possible to charge more than a couple $100 for a website or $50 for a logo, unless you were playing at the highest tiers, right? Unless you're working with Fortune 500 companies. And I didn't even believe it was possible until I saw somebody else do it. Somebody else that I was, in my network said, yeah, we just charged $2,000 for this logo. And it blew my mind, like the possibility of this just was like, my God. So then I tried increasing my prices. I tried charging $1,000 for my next project and it worked. Okay. They signed off on it. right? So it was like,
I
oh
see.
my God. So that was the beginning of the snowball, which eventually had uh, put me in the room negotiating $250,000 deals and $1 million deals for the same kind of work that I was doing for 50, 60, $70.
That's quite a transformation, yeah. And I love what you just pointed out. Like you need this. Your subconscious needs this proof, right? It's possible, but you need something that actually you can tell your subconscious anything you want, but if you can't deliver the proof, it's hard to believe in it. But those are beliefs, right? Those limiting beliefs. Beautiful. So, but I also know that before, like, you actually have a remarkable backstory. Like you were a policeman, right? And now you're running the biggest education company for the creative space.
Yeah.
Tell me, like,
Yeah.
how was when was that? Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
Honestly, the journey starts back in high school. If you want to take it back that far, I mean, I've I've done so many different things and changed so many different times over the years that it can be hard to keep track of what year corresponds with what career change. But back in high school, I was fascinated with photography. I absolutely loved taking photos, and in those days, I'm going to date myself here. In those days, it was film photography, right?
Ah,
So I was
yeah.
spending time out shooting, and then we would go in the darkroom and develop the stuff. It was magical, just absolutely magical. The smell of the darkroom chemicals, all that kind of stuff, and I loved doing that stuff. And I loved it so much that I burned through all of my school's photo classes. I took photo 1 through 4 very, very quickly in the span of, I think, 2 years. And I wanted more. And I was a senior at that point. So I went to my guidance counselor and I was like, there has to be some way for me to get exposed to more photo classes. Is there anything I can do? Right. And I'm asking for the impossible. The classes don't exist in the catalog. And he goes, I'll make you a deal. He said, my guidance counselor was also our chorus director for the school.
Okay.
He said, I saw that you had performed at the Battle of the Bands the night before. I think you have a nice voice. If you come in and join my show choir, I'll create a Photo 5 class for you.
Amazing.
And so that's how it went. It's my senior year. I had photo classes that didn't exist. I joined show choir and that's how I kind of brokered that deal. And you'll notice that there's just a pattern of that. And I think that that's something that has been pointed out to me by my coaches and my mentors, is that there's just something that I don't know if it's the way I was raised or something. So it might even be broken inside of me that just allows me to ask if something might be possible, even though on paper it's not possible.
Oh.
Right. So fast forward through college, I bounced around all over the place. I was, I think I started out in journalism and then moved over to advertising, and then finally found a home in media arts as a major. And media arts was like the rubbish bin that my university threw all of the creative classes that didn't belong anywhere else. So
Yeah, okay.
I took a video game class, a video game design class. I took just a whole bunch of other, random creative stuff. But I didn't know design was a thing. I had no idea. We can blame the American education system on this, but I had absolutely no idea that design was a career path. But I was interested in marketing because of my exposure to it in my advertising classes. So I was like, okay, this is cool. This is fun. I like making the ads. I liked working in Photoshop at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Through that, I noticed on a job board, there was an internship open at an agency called Post No Bills. And the internship was for design. So I went ahead and I applied. I got an interview. So I showed up. I think I was a sophomore in college at that point. I showed up to the interview and I walked into this creative agency, like this, there were toys everywhere. There was loud music playing, people were in, jeans and t-shirts. And I walked in wearing a very stiff, stuffy suit that didn't fit well from Men's Warehouse that I bought that day for that interview. Right.
Nice.
So I walk up in there just feeling like, oh my God, what have I done? I also didn't know that, like, I'm looking at this business and I'm like, oh my God, what is this place? This is fascinating, right? This creative culture is incredible. So I sat down, to conduct the interview, and the creative director sat down on the other side of the desk. And she was, hippie, went to Ringling School of Design, classically trained designer. And looking back, just an incredible powerhouse of a designer. And she goes, okay, can I see your portfolio? I said, what is that? I had no idea what a portfolio even was. She was asking to see a body of work, and I didn't know what that was. And so she was like, well, it's examples of your work. And I was like, oh, I can bring some of those back. And she was like, all right, well, why don't you come back tomorrow with some examples of your work? And then she proceeded on with the rest of the interview. So I stayed up all night because I didn't have anything. I had a bunch of photos from high school, which, let's be honest, they weren't very good. I had a whole bunch of ads that I had done for my ad class, but again, they weren't that great. So I stayed up all night and created a body of, I created 3 projects. I literally Googled what goes in a portfolio and then just created 3 different brands. I think one was a beer brand. I can't remember what the other 2 were. So I came back. She looked at me. She was like, did you stay up all night to do this? Because I must have looked absolutely ragged, right? I came in, I was like, I got it. Okay, here it is. Then I showed her. And she was like, okay, the work isn't very good. I'm just going to tell you that up front. But I really respect your hustle. I really respect the time that you put in. And if this is the work ethic that you bring to the table here, we're going to be just fine. And so, just like the pattern of asking things for that shouldn't be asked for, that part-time internship turned into a full-time gig before I had graduated school. So I moved all of my classes to night. And by the time I had graduated from university, I was a senior designer in that company. So it was like on the way. But then 2008 hit, and I was looking for some way out of that role. I wanted to find a new role. But after 2008, I mean, there just wasn't much available. And I was sitting there, I was like, man, I don't know if I want to be chained to the desk forever. Maybe I need to do something different. I had felt like I'd been pursuing this creative thing for so long. I tried freelancing for a little bit, and it wasn't clicking. And so I was like, let's try something crazy. I'm going to be a CIA agent. So I put in for the CIA.
Okay.
And the thing about applying for the CIA is if you apply for that job, it's likely that you're not going to get it. And then at the thank you screen, they said, if you don't hear from us in the next 24 hours, you will never be a CIA employee. Well, guess what?
What?
I didn't hear from him. So
Damn.
So then I just worked my way down the chain of cool jobs, or what, my 22-year-old self thought was a cool job. And I landed at a local police department. So I set down my Pantone book and my mouse, and I picked up a badge and gun. And then from there, I just kept getting promoted, kept working hard, kept trying to figure out, like, how can I help the most people? How can I get the most guns and drugs off the street? How can I prevent the most violent crimes? That was just my mission. I was living it. And eventually I wound up in a multi-jurisdictional narcotics unit. So I was a narcotics agent. I was working with the DEA. We were running wiretaps, and we were
Like in the movie.
trying to we were trying to stop the sale of hard drugs throughout the Southeast United States. And that's where the beard came in, some of the undercover days there. But the thing that earmarked that phase in the career was running wiretaps is a really boring thing to do because you're just in a room waiting for the phone to ring. And then when the phone does ring, sometimes it's not about, the kind of stuff that we're interested in. So we turn it off. And, my buddies would use that time to work out or like watch movies or hang out. I started working again. I was renovating my house. I needed some extra cash. And so I was like, let me try freelancing. That's when I found those platforms like Upwork and Odesk and all that kind of stuff. So I got back to it. And from there, the rest is kind of a more linear journey, right? Started freelancing full time, took that full time freelance, that solopreneur, solo studio, started hiring some people, eventually built a team of 5. And then, most of us were acqui-hired by Chris, and we went out, started working at Blind, and doubled down on TheFutur. So that's my story.
That's quite a unique story. I love it. Are you sure you're not some spy or some secret like double agent here? Love it.
No, thankfully, no.
I love it. I mean, here's what I've just noticed is like when you talk about your past, it's like you have this do-it-yourself mindset, this mentality, right? It's like back in the days, like it was like I grew up probably the same time, and like we had to invent something to not be bored, right? There was no social media. We had to invent games and stuff like that, and then all those things. And what you've just perfectly illustrated was like you just went out there and did the things. You asked for them, right? All those things. You didn't wait till something came to you. You didn't go after the credentials and wait that something happens. You just made it happen, right? I love that story because you actually broke through those limiting beliefs before you even had them. And what I see a lot of times these days is more like, well, what I don't see is this do-it-yourself mentality. People don't go out; they don't try. It's just they ask before they try, things like that. And you're part of TheFutur, right? It's like, I mean, you train thousands of people from all over the world. Do you notice something like, is there a generational difference or is there something? I'm just poking here. I have no idea, but is there something?
I don't know if it's a generational difference. I think it's, for me, I noticed a lot in the creative space. It seems like creative people were brought up thinking that in order to be creative, you have to sacrifice all of the other good things in life. And I think that there's a little bit of guilt there. I think that there's a little bit of, this has been trained into them, the starving artist mentality. But they think that because they get to draw rectangles all day, that they shouldn't be successful in other areas of life. And so that seems to be the underlying belief. And so many of them are waiting. So many of you guys are waiting for permission. They're waiting for permission to charge more. They're waiting for permission to start freelancing on the side. They're waiting for permission to start a business full time. They're waiting for permission to do the work that they want to do. Oh man, I can't tell you how many times somebody comes to me and they're like, oh, I wish I could do a brand like X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, well, you should just do it. Like, what do you mean? Like, you don't need a client, dude. Just do the work that you want to do and put it out there in the world, and somebody will see that. Maybe they'll buy it. Maybe they'll just like hire you to do something that's related to it. But it seems like they bring in this, or we bring in this I don't know. It's a limiting belief, but it's almost like they believe that they have to have permission to do a lot of this stuff. And the other thing, you see this a lot in the creative space, especially like design Twitter. I love you guys, but you could be really harsh sometimes. But it's like not only do they believe that because they draw rectangles that they're not allowed to succeed, but when they see somebody else succeed, they cut them down. You know, we see a lot of this. Our Brett from Design Joy started a design subscription, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how much money he makes, and he does it in a way that invites controversy. But some of the comments, I mean, they're so incredibly illuminating to the mindset that some of these creatives bring to the table, where it's like, you shouldn't be making that much money because you're creative, right?
Whoa.
And it's
deep.
It's just crazy. It's I'll stop there.
But I totally feel it. I mean, I'm in the same space. I talk to the same people. I coach them. And it's like always this, like, just came out of a call before we started here, and was like 90 minutes just giving permission and giving permission. And but it helps actually. That giving permission is actually something that works very well. But I love what you just said. You don't need a client to make amazing work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you make amazing work, you get clients. I love that. And it's like also like this you're right, I never thought about that before, is that as creatives, it's hard to accept that someone else is more successful. Although oftentimes their work is not better, maybe the same, but they found a way to sell it. And then we talk about selling out, and we talk about he's a salesman, and all those things, right? It's like, you're right, there might be something here. I love it. That's deep. Yeah.
Have you ever told somebody that they have permission to feel something?
I know, like this is what my coach keeps telling me.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like, I'm really angry about this, but then you sense the guilt behind the anger, and I'm like, dude, you can feel angry right now. It's okay. Like, it's okay to feel angry when somebody asks you for something that's out of scope, right? Yeah. Feel it. Feel your anger, right? But you know, we can work on what's next after that. But if you just continue to deny yourself the emotional reaction that you're having, you're gonna explode. It's a volcano situation. That happens a lot with creatives too.
What do you mean, like just capturing the feeling, not letting it out, just burying it, or what?
Yeah, or just not allowing yourself to feel.
Yeah. Okay, right? That's interesting. Like, why do you think this happens? Why do you think creatives, like, we see ourselves as the ones, like, that part of society that is the most empathic in some ways?
Yeah,
but we can't feel ourselves.
I think that it's. I think, again, going back to the limiting belief, I think that people believe that they shouldn't feel hurt when somebody critiques their work negatively.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, that's so true.
But your work, you put your heart and soul into your work. And so why wouldn't you be hurt? It's okay. It's okay to feel that way. It's okay to recover really quickly too. But it's also okay to have those feelings.
And it's okay to be criticized, right? It's okay to it's just an opinion.
Yeah. And I think that the most important, or the most tragic thing that happens is that a creative will share their work, then they'll get critiqued, and it'll hurt because the work that they did was really close to the soul, right? They put everything into it. They put themselves into it. Then they get a negative critique and it hurts. And they feel like that, oh, well, they shouldn't be hurt by a negative critique. And so obviously there's something wrong with them. So they shouldn't put their work out there anymore. I think that's the most tragic thing in the world, because I think everybody is going to get hurt a little bit when a negative critique comes in.
Yeah. But
I think that that's totally normal, right? And I think that if you have somebody that can end a critique session with, you know, almost emotional support, where it's like, hey, okay, right? That's wonderful, but you know, you're not always going to get that, if ever.
If like most creators are not trained in giving feedback, they are not trained in therapy and coaching and things like that. That's true. I had some harsh feedbacks back in my days, but what I've learned is there are two ways you can react it. You can, like, you just duck and you don't accept it, or you take it as it hurts you, right? Or you just take it as fuel. It's like, okay, I got it. I need to work with that energy and make it better now. I'm going to show this. I'm going to show that I can do better and use the feedback, and then you get better. And I think this is like taking the punches and actually making out of something out of it, using that energy, using that feedback. And what I've
Oh
seen,
yeah,
I've seen so
like the
many.
follow up, right? That what happens after you get punched
Yeah.
is that you feel pain, and then you react, right,
Yes.
accordingly. You take that energy and you turn it into something good, or
But if you shy away now, you actually create a barrier, a wall, a limiting belief, because you accepted it. And if you accept it, your subconscious says, okay, that seems to be true. So we don't go there anymore.
I know. And it's like, I think that there are a lot of creatives that are like walking around thinking that getting punched in the face shouldn't hurt.
I love that. It does hurt. Yes, that's good.
It does hurt, man. Like, after you can handle the pain in many different ways and you can turn it into something wonderful, right? But like, you know, I think that there's a little bit of pain that can be expected here. And that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't push the boundaries, I mean, if you don't get outside your comfort zone, if you don't push the boundaries, you don't get hurt. But you also make dull work, and no one wants to see it. That's true.
Yeah. You know, if you don't share your work, you never get critiques.
Yeah, exposure, right.
But then you're not going to get more work, you know?
And the same translates to selling, right? It's not enough just to show your work. You actually have to make people aware of your work, get in front of people, all those things. And I love that. Yeah, that's... So you mentioned... You mentioned you have coaches, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I sense a lot of the language from coaching. You're fluent in that. So what's like? I think that would be really amazing for the people to understand how someone in your position still needs coaching.
Oh yeah. So I've been through therapy, and then I've also had coaches. As a police officer, especially being on the street, I've seen some things, and those things I needed help working through, and that's where therapy kind of came in.
Mm-hmm.
Therapy, in my mind, helps you heal from the past, right? The things that have happened already for you, and allows you to work through those things so that you're able to move forward. Coaching helps you move forward. It's a forward-looking thing, right? And I think coaches deal with limiting beliefs a lot that are often rooted in past things, but coaches will give you the skills and the tactics to move forward. So last year was a big coaching year for me. I worked with two coaches and we worked through a bunch of stuff. Like, I had this limiting belief that because I wasn't Chris Doe, who is my boss and you know my friend, that what I had to say wasn't as valuable, right? And this also corresponded with us starting the accelerator program at TheFutur, which is my baby, right? It's a membership, it's a class, it's a coaching experience, it's a blueprint for creatives at the beginning of their career. Going into this, I had this really negative limiting belief. It was holding me back that the things that I said we're not as valuable as someone with Chris's experience and Chris's accolades, going to design school, winning an Emmy Award.
Right.
And so again, this is not a problem that's in my past, even though therapy might be able to help me root out the source of that limiting belief. But coaching helped me move forward with it.
Right.
And so we worked a whole bunch on that stuff. We worked a lot on, management coaching and some limiting beliefs around that. But the biggest thing that we worked through was, how to be confident that I had value to bring to the table. And since then, being able to run coaching calls with 80, 90, 100 people every single Friday, I've seen the value firsthand that I've been able to deliver. I've helped people work through their own limiting beliefs, and I've helped people work through their own challenges in their business. And thankfully, we've worked through a bunch of that. But I like coaches for that, right? I like coaches to help navigate towards something that you want to move to, versus dealing with the past.
This is a perfect story because you had this. I mean, there's Christo, and he is the father of the future, and he will always be the face of the company, more or less. So I get it. This is like if you want to compare yourself, you don't have the same background. You didn't win an Emmy, as you said. But what I love, what you realize, is that you still are valuable. It's just different, right? The value you bring to the table is different value. You may not be as fluent in design as him, but you have other things. Maybe it's team management. Maybe it's all the experience you bring to the table with being an undercover spy from the past. That's valuable, right? I love that. That's, and that I think people can understand. Like, this is like, okay, there's this big. You actually had expectations towards yourself, right? Like huge expectations.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And almost like it's crazy to say, but I'm a good designer. I'm not a great designer. I'm not going to be heralded as one of the legends in design. But I thought that I couldn't tell somebody to put together a portfolio if they didn't have a portfolio, because I didn't have an Emmy Award. Right?
Right.
It's like the most basic fundamental of creating a creative service business. You got to have proof that you can do what you say you do. You got to have a portfolio, right? That's a no-brainer. But I felt like, oh man, if I gave that advice, I in order to give that advice, I got to win an Emmy or two.
And
right? That's crazy.
Two, right? You want to have two. Like, we have more. It's not one, Chris. I got two now. But here's the thing: that Emmy, that would have given you permission, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you give yourself permission then?
I think it took coaching. Mm-hmm. It really took coaching. Number one, to see how ridiculous it was. Right. That's the thing about limiting beliefs. A lot of times, they look scary. They feel like a big deal. They feel like they're haunting you, right? Yeah. But the moment you rip the sheet off of the ghost, you realize that there's nothing there. There's nothing holding it up. Yes. And so limiting beliefs can often be overcome with simple logic. And really all it took was just a constant reminder from coaches that this was founded on something that's just absolutely silly, just silliness, right? So I think that helped me overcome that one.
And I guess also like doing a call every Friday, actually getting exposure, getting the experience, getting feedback would probably also help. But you wouldn't get that if you wouldn't put yourself out there, if you wouldn't be vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think it's important for everybody who's listening to kind of remember the timeline of events here. We started Accelerator in February of 2023, right? So our Friday calls started in February 2023. I started coaching in in January.
You got a head
So
start.
it wasn't like I had the time to really work through this stuff.
Yes.
and once again, I just gave it a shot. I gave it a try, And what I found, and I found this every single time. Like I have a note to myself on this monitor. It just says, just try and see. It's taped to this thing.
Perfect.
Every time I do that, I realize like, oh yeah, I can figure this out. Right. And so in that first coaching call, we opened it up for questions. And the first question, like, oh yeah, I can help with this. And then the second question, like, absolutely, I can help you with this. Third question, same thing. And so I think that I was stacking up evidence that the limiting belief wasn't true right there in that first call. So it was the combination of having a coach remind me that logically you're being silly, and then also evidence because I was trying.
And you got feedback
for the opposite.
You understood. And luckily no one asked you about a portfolio, how to make a portfolio. It was the one question not to be asked. I love it. So I want to also share something with the audience. And I was like, what I've realized also is that people, no matter where you are, you might still have the same limiting beliefs. It's like I work with freelancers, but I also have one client. They have like they make 24 million in annual revenue, and working with the founders is like it's the same thing. It's not like they still have limiting beliefs, and it's still like there will always be something that's holding you back from getting to the next level, and usually it's you. Another limiting belief, another thing you thought it's never going to happen, it's not possible, another thing you don't give yourself permission because you think, yeah, someone else needs to give you permission like that. And it's like, well, this actually was the evidence for me, like actually that, and silly enough, it's the same thing that you said, like coaching freelancers that made less money than me. I thought, okay, that's a given. And I needed that evidence that I could coach someone that was really good in their business, like making 24 million at something. And I was once I realized that we all have the same problems, the same struggles, it was like eye-opening. It actually freed me from comparing people. I don't have this thing anymore where I have to compare people but that came from that experience, from getting out there, from doing things I thought I wasn't supposed to do, really. Because I never made 24 millions a year, not yet.
Yep. And I think that there is something powerful about being able to be on the outside, right? It's hard to see the forest through the trees.
Yeah.
But last week in our coaching call, wonderful woman, just absolutely a sweetheart. Every time she raises her hand, I am like really excited to hear from her. She starts saying, I'm worried about cold outreach. We teach cold outreach in a very warm way. I'm worried about cold outreach. I'm worried about reaching out to the people that I've worked with in the past. I'm worried about tapping into my network, and I just, I don't want to interrupt their day and be asking for something. And I just feel like nobody's going to want to hear from me like that. And it's so easy to see the ridiculousness of that concern, that worry.
Yeah.
And so I was just, I just asked her, I said, why do you think you're a burden on other people? And she was taken aback. She was surprised. She thought about it. And she said, I don't know. And I said, I would wager a bet, just like me, your entire network would love to hear from you right now. They would love to see an email come through asking them, hey, how you doing? Oh, this is what I've been up to, right? And she left that call feeling a little bit taller. I left that call feeling a little bit taller. But it's so easy to see right through what somebody's struggling with, the huge rock that is in their path, that when you look at it from the side, it's just a movie prop, right? It's a piece of 1/4-inch plywood painted.
Right.
So
it's easy to spot that in someone else, but not in yourself, right? Not in front of you. That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I take it that you actually coach on those calls, right? It's not just people ask you a question and you actually go into that. You coach people, things like that.
Yeah. We kind of do a hybrid. So I think that there's coaching, and then there's also not consulting, but there's giving advice on experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a coach in this environment, in the environment of Accelerator that we built, you have to be able to know the difference between if somebody needs coaching or mentorship, like advice on your experience.
Right.
And so sometimes they're going to ask a question like, hey, I don't know what to do next because a client emailed them, I don't know, an objection, or maybe it's like, hey, a client's asking for another revisions and I don't know what to do next. That's an easy, like, okay, based on my experience, here's what I would do in your shoes. And I would just tell them, right? But then there's things like, our buddy from last week, where it's like, yeah, you can tell her just to email, but there's something there, right? There's something that she needs coaching on. There's something that she's, if somebody's really stuck, that deserves a deeper dive.
Because they have this big rock, they built this big barrier in front of them, which is not really there. So they won't take action, right? It's like, yes, it's obvious. She might even know what to do, but there's this belief, you could call it anything else, but it's like, it really isn't limiting beliefs. Like, no one wants to hear from me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's deep. So what else do you like in your coaching calls? What else? I would love to get some more ideas how you help creatives in those calls.
I think a lot of people just need a constant reminder that they're doing the right thing. The entrepreneurial journey is long, and it's hard. It's hard for everybody. It's simple, right? The things that you have to do to grow a business are pretty simple, but it's difficult, right? It's tough.
Yes, it's.
And so I think just there's so many times where somebody will bring what they feel like is a problem, and they feel like, hey, this is, they're doubting if they're on the right path and all that kind of stuff. And you just have to remind them, like, hey, man, you've been at this for 3 weeks. You'll be all right. Just keep going. Going. Like,
might take a decade or two to get there. Yes.
Yeah. But sometimes, we'll get into like dealing with weird situations that people find themselves in with clients, and then we'll work through. Sometimes we do some role play. Sometimes, we'll leave them with some scripts, and then sometimes that kind of thing will trickle down into an obstacle. The other day, this is, again, from the outside in, it looks so simple. But a couple weeks ago, we had this person who had an opportunity. A client was asking him to do X, Y, and Z. Well, that project, it was a UI design project, right? So that project was about 5 times the size in scope than the previous client, than the previous project that came from that same client. So they did a small project with this guy. They loved the way he worked. Then they asked him for 5x the amount of work he did before. So the math to me was simple. It's like, great. If it's 5 times the amount of work, then we're going to price this thing at 5 times what you priced before, right?
Or 7 times.
And he was like, no, I could never.
Why?
Right. Now, to give some context, we're talking about a price point of 10 grand. It was $10,000. That was it. Which in the grand scheme is this weird number where, everybody who's coming up, they're fighting to get to that 10K mark in their projects. Most people who have surpassed that are like, oh, okay, well, it's 10K, right? That's in the grand scheme, it's not a massive number.
No.
But he was like, there's no way I could ask for that.
So you told him
like,
to ask for 50K in the end, right? This is
no. Whenever we give advice around pricing, it's always individual, right? So it's like, what do you think you should be charging for this? What did you charge for something like this in the past? What's a good number to strive towards, right? Because people are in different financial positions all over the world, right? $2,000 to somebody who lives in Los Angeles is going to be really different than, somebody who's in South America, right? In a I don't know, maybe it's Brazil. It's a wildly different economy, and those two people are going to be very different. So we can't objectively say this is a good number and this is a bad number. So we're always coaching based on personal experience and personal situations. So we took this thing through, and he was like, yeah, I guess I should charge 10K. And I'm like, you don't sound too confident in that, dude. What are you doing? And he's like, I'm like, okay, there's something here. What is this? And he's like, I just can't charge. I can't ask for that amount. And I'm like, why? He's like, this is my second project with them, and I just don't have. I've only been doing this for 3 years, and I just my other projects are priced at much lower. And I was like, why don't you feel good enough? What is it that's making you feel like you are not good enough for this number? Because I was like, I've seen your work. Your work is wonderful, because we review portfolios and give feedback and stuff on work as well. And I'm like, I've reviewed your work. It's great. So what is it? And we went on this journey of, he was raised in a household that didn't have a lot of money, and any extra money that came in was often distributed in the community. And so he felt like not only was he not good enough to receive this because of where he was born, but he also didn't think that anybody deserved this.
Oh, that's huge. That's big.
Huge, right? And so it wasn't a judgment that he was putting on everybody else. Like he's not some troll that will go comment on somebody's post that, like, oh, you should never charge. That's a ripoff. No, he wore his own very dark colored sunglasses. And we had to work through that, right? And the way that we were able to work through that is by charging enough. How much good are you going to be able to create in the world, right?
Love it.
If you're able to profit from this, if your profit margin on this is going to be 80%, 90%, after you've paid all your bills for all the time that you've spent working on this and paid yourself what you need to bring home, what could you do with that amount of money? Could you do some work in the space to give back to the community? Could you donate some of that? What could you do with that money to create good in the world? And he realized that it wasn't that he shouldn't deserve this. It wasn't that he shouldn't be allowed to bring this in. He realized that the money enabled him to do the good that he wanted to do in the world.
That's a huge.
And then that's what he did. So
I love how simply you reframed this, but this is like people are, they are often stuck with no one should make this money, but they don't realize that they could actually use that money. Money is a resource, right? It's not a bad thing. It's a resource. You can use it to help people. You have to pay your team. The better you pay your team, the better they can take care of their family. That's a beautiful thing, right? Everyone wants to make money and support their own family through design. So making the money, getting the jobs, so your team can actually live off what they love doing, this is a beautiful thing to achieve. There's something to strive for. I love it. Yeah, amazing.
And what we teach in it's in module 5. I've got this functional finances worksheet, right? The assignment is they have to fill out the entire worksheet, and I think it's four sheets in Excel.
Right.
They start with their personal budget, they move into their business expenses, and then there's a whole bunch of other math that goes on behind the scenes. And the assignment there is not only to finish the sheet, but also to post your insights. Like, what did you learn from this process? 95% of the people that complete that assignment say, I didn't realize how much money I needed to charge to survive.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
And it's so true, because so many people look at it like, okay, well, if I'm making $20 an hour from my day job or $30 an hour from my day job, well, then I'm going to be in great shape if I'm charging $40 an hour as a freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
But if you extrapolate that to full time, number one, you're only making money when you're working. And so you're never not going to work.
Yeah.
And number two, there's no space in there. There's no money that will fund things like personal projects, passion projects, like giving back to the community. There's no room in there to take a vacation, or God forbid, if you get sick and have to take some extended time off, you're not actually building your runway. You're just barely surviving, if that. And so that's one of the big insights. And so the way that we've done this is we've reframed the pricing mentality. We've reframed price in general as fuel, as gasoline, right? And so now all of a sudden, charging more stops being some greedy sellout move of the, of the creative masses.
Yes.
and becomes more, by charging more, not only do I have more fuel to keep my business afloat, but I can also contribute more to the things that matter to me and be able to do the things that I care about even without clients, right? So it becomes, we transition it away from greed and more towards a necessary resource of fuel.
You get them out of the scarcity mindset too. It's like once they accept that they can charge more, and then they see it as something good, as a resource, as a fuel, as you said. I love this analogy, fuel, building the runway. It makes sense, right? And then they get the good feeling, and it's like, it's not asking for something they shouldn't get, but it's just helping others, things like that. I have one more question. And this might get too personal, so tell me if it is.
Okay.
What's your, at this point right now, where you are, what's your biggest limiting belief?
A lot of times limiting beliefs are found at the bottom of a fear. And I've had this identity for a long time as a designer, right? That's my craft. I still design. I love the craft of design. But I'm really good at coaching. And I'm also in a space now where not only are we educating, but we're also coaching. And I'm terrified of being lumped in with the fake gurus, right? The grifters. And so I'm working through that right now. And it's one of those things that, like, logically, I know that I don't fit. Like, I've got the receipts. I have helped so many people succeed in their business, succeed in their creative careers. I mean, the numbers are probably in the thousands at this point of people that I've helped both one-on-one and in a group setting. And I'm not even counting the people that, have used the products that I've created. Mm-hmm. So I've got the receipts, and logically I get it, but I'm also, it's a scary thing. It's not something that I don't want that label. And, That's what I'm struggling with right now.
I can so feel this. This is kind of what I'm going through too. Or it's hard. Like it's like I resisted calling myself a coach for 3, 4, 5 years now, and I have like I put so much money and effort and time into my education and doing all this, like in the tenth of thousands. But I just recently I called myself a coach, and it's like it's the same reason why you have this fear, and I have the same fear. It's like there's so many people out there that just scamming people, ripping them off, doing coaching. Everyone became a coach these days. I don't know what to do. I'm just a coach. Yeah, I get that. It's like the reputation as a coach is not what it used to be, but it's
It
still.
sucks. It really sucks because like before we created Accelerator, I was charging for coaching on a one-on-one basis. It's something we do at TheFutur. Everybody that works here has the option to stand up a coaching page with us. And, we walk them through how to do this. I've worked with, before we started Accelerator, I'd worked with hundreds of people on a one-on-one basis for money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also worked with, almost 1,000 people who went through another one of our programs, Business Bootcamp. That was more in a group setting. Sometimes it was one-on-one. If somebody was really struggling, I would pull them aside and we'd sit there and talk about it. Before doing any of that, I had hundreds of calls with people that were not paid, that were both in a group setting and one-on-one, where I was just helping. I was there to help, right? And I did it for free because I didn't feel, number one, good enough to charge. And number two, I didn't feel like it was right for me to charge. I still believe that to this day. I think that no matter what you do, if you're a designer or an animator, or you want to be a coach, before you charge for those services, I really believe that you need to prove your ability to do this.
Yes. And not just do a weekend course and call yourself a coach.
Yes. And it has to work.
Yes.
That's the thing. Oh, yeah. You have to get the result, the impact that the person across the table is looking for, right? So it's like if you're hired to do a logo, or if somebody wants you to do a logo, doing pro bono work in the beginning, I think it should happen, whether you're working as an intern or doing pro bono work as a freelancer. And then you have to get them a logo that works and get them the impact that they would otherwise pay for. Same thing with coaching. I really think that you have to be able to have an impact on people and be able to have those receipts before you start paying or before you start accepting money. Maybe that's a limiting belief that I have, but I'm going to stand by it. I'm not willing to break through that.
Just now a limiting belief,
it's the right
well,
way.
I mean, this is kind of, in some sense, yes, it probably is a limiting belief because there are coaches out there. They are good, and then they do that. But there are a lot of coaches out there these days. I mean, what you have built through those one-on-one sessions is muscle memory, right? It's not just the knowledge, but you have the muscle memory. You know what to do, even though you sometimes don't know logically what the next step should be, but you feel it and you do it and you say it and it works. Why? Because you have the muscle memory. And this comes back to being an artist. As an artist, you need to have this muscle memory too, right? You need to build, you need to craft, you need to have made like hundreds and thousands of logos before you can charge like 2 or 10K for them, right? Your first 100 logos will not be good. It's just, and the same is like your first 100 100 coaching hours. My first 100 coaching hours weren't that good. Right? It's like, but you learn from them, and you need to keep doing the thing, exposing yourself, being vulnerable, and like building that muscle memory. That I love that. That's that's how you need to get the receipts, you need to get the results. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
And it's just a pity that there's so many, and I'll throw an age out there too, but there's so many people who are 20, 21, 22 who are doing life coaching out there that I'm like, bro, what life have you lived? Right? So I'm terrified of being lumped in with those folks. And I know logically it's one of those like literally one glance below the surface level, and
you see it. Yeah.
I'm a different breed, but it's just one of those things, man.
I mean, it's like it's a lucrative market, so a lot of people want to get into, and I believe, I hope that soon enough people will find something new, and they all move towards maybe AI or something else. Something like that. But I recently had like this very similar discussion with a very young life coach, and what I'm told is like, I'm not going to accept any advice from you before you get married, because this changes life and have kids. Like, this is different. Life is easy without kids. It's so simple. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
Cool.
But I think to kind of land the plane on a positive note, I think coaching is a very powerful vehicle for progress, and I have a lot of belief in coaching as a practice. But please, before you hire the coach, before you sign up for a program, just make sure that they have the receipts. Right. Mm-hmm. Just make sure that they can do what they say that they can do. And that can be tricky, but it's the thing that's worth doing. So I'll end with go get coached. It'll help.
Go get coached. Beautiful message. I thank you so much, Ben. That was a lovely episode. It was the longest I've recorded so far. So it means I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Marko and hope to see you all again on our next show, where we unfold creative business minds.